So today we have Sanjay Jha, a man who needs no introduction. If you have been watching any news, any discussion, this man comes as a sharp commentator, the man who doesn't mince his word and has an answer for everything and is witty, is smart, and he also comes from the place that I come from, Bihar. So I'm immensely proud to have you here, Sanjay, and thank you so much for coming and joining me. But we'll start with calling out the elephant in the room about the Congress and your association. So my first question to you, Sanjay, is India's grand old party is struggling to make a recovery from the electoral reversal, organizational disarray, probably also ideological vagueness, and perhaps a leadership crisis as well. A party which ruled for 54 years of the 74 years of the Indian independent India doesn't today even feature as a strong opposition in the state elections or the national elections. Recently, we saw young Turks who probably could have taken Congress a bit far forward. They also jumped the ship to align with BJP. You have been there, you have been in and you have been out, and still you call yourself a Congressy by what is it, by DNA. So you have seen it all, and who better than you could tell us what went wrong, what goes wrong? Does Congress not care for its own people, or is it too big a dynasty by 3-4 people who are more than probably all the people put together?
Well, Sujata, you have raised all the fundamental issues that encapsulate Congress's reality. I don't want to mince words because you have now said that Sajjan never beats about the bush, so I'll bite the bullet. We have an existential crisis. As you rightly mentioned, this is the party that has governed India for 54 years. I mean, almost, if you think about it, almost 70% or 75% post-independence. It has been a Congress government at the center. And if you include the states where at one point Congress was dominant right till the late 60s, it's a phenomenal contribution that the Congress party has made to the country. The fact that it has begun to lose, frankly, it happens in a democracy. Sometimes you have a great run, you have a momentum. Sometimes, the people are disillusioned with you. It takes you time to get back. I can live with that. But Sujata, the problem has been that the Congress has not given the impression to the people of India that we are ready for a fight back. People are not disappointed that the Congress perhaps has had a terrible run. They know that, sometimes, as I say, problems come in battalions and they completely knock the hell out of you. It is like a Mike Tyson knockout blow within the first round. It happens. But, the guy wakes up and gets ready to take another bout maybe 6 months later. I think the problem is that the Congress hasn't...
Tiger Woods.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said Tiger Woods is a great example.
Tiger Woods is an example, yeah. I mean, look at him. He went through hell and went back and won the Masters until he's had another terrible accident. So I do believe that resurrection is all a question of your willpower. In a democracy, there's only one winner. Unlike, you get a runner-up at the French Open, Tsitsipas is the runner-up, and Djokovic wins, and Wimbledon, who knows, maybe Federer will win, maybe Nadal will be the runner-up. But there is a runner-up. Here, there is no runner-up. The winner takes it all. And therefore, the Congress has to recognize that, you have an ideology, you have history, you've got great leaders. You still have a footprint across the country. The Congress still gets 20% of the popular votes.
Yes.
And I believe 2019 was almost like an abysmal low. And yet 20% of India is standing by you, which means that is like literally your bottom. So if you work hard, that 20 can become 25. If you work harder, that can become 30, and then the game is on. I have a feeling that it's a combination of factors that you already mentioned. But I don't want to take a long time answering your question because I'd rather face a lot of questions from you. But in short, the problem can be explained as partly organizational reforms have not happened. There's a lack of inner party democracy. We don't have elections like the way we should and can have. The Congress president needs to be elected in a proper process. And by the way, if after 2 Lok Sabha election defeats, when Rahul said, I'm no longer coming back as a Congress president.
Yeah.
And he said, nobody from the family is coming back. And then 2 years later, you don't even have a president even today, a permanent president even today. I mean, do I blame you or anybody in any part of India saying, is the Congress serious or what? Have you guys surrendered? Have you guys given up? I mean, that's preposterous because the Congress has got people, talent, ideology, history, organization, offices. It has media presence. It's got everything. I think the problem, in short, is this: you need to take a call on your leadership, because I think a party becomes like its leader. So if you choose a leader, whether it's X, Y, or Z, that leader will have to bring his or her character into the game. And most importantly, what the Congress needs thereafter is a hunger to come back. No party wins forever. I want to tell you that. Congress won all the time. Now it's losing. BJP has been winning. Mr. Modi and the BJP will lose. Whether they lose in 24, I don't know. But it's up there. It's up there. Nobody can take it for granted that they're winning 24 the way they have messed up or rather screwed up the handling of the pandemic. So I think it's all up in the air. If the Congress gets its act together, game on.
Yeah. So, in a situation like this, if assuming, I don't believe that Modi is going to lose in 24, 29, maybe, if Congress puts up a fight. But I mean, it is, India changes every 6 months or 4 months. Things change, people change, mind change, and vote share changes. So, having said that, today Congress is perhaps reduced to whatever BJP doesn't do, probably Congress stands for that. So you can't be someone's opposite and have an identity. You need to have an identity of your own. That's why I said ideological vagueness. You fight election against a party in Kerala. You go and have an alliance with the same party in West Bengal. So you don't know, I mean, where this party stands for, what it says in Kerala or what it says in Bengal. I understand that to probably counter a mighty opponent, you need to come together, but there has to be some ideology as well, because Congress at least is not short of ideology, because that's what Congress is perhaps thought and made on ideology. So where does this noises get lost? I mean, these voices get lost, Sanjay. So why does this voice become noise, perhaps, and not reach the top, Rahul Gandhi or Sonia Gandhi or Priyanka Gandhi? I'm sure they have advisors, but who is advising them? Why is it? Are they really so far off from reality? Or people like you talk and tell and ask that why are we not waking up? Or probably when you talk, you are out of the party.
Let me say this, Sujata, that 2024 is weeks and months away. It's even years away. Yes. As Harold Wilson famously said, a week is a long time in politics. And trust me, I'm willing to lay a wager that all those people who have taken it for granted that the BJP is winning in 2024 could be in for a very, very rude surprise. It's very unlikely, in my opinion, that the terrible, I think the monumental mammoth fiasco of the second wave of coronavirus, I don't think India is ever going to forget that nightmare, no matter whether you're going to V-shaped economic recovery or whatever. I believe when the Delhi High Court said that somebody needs to be booked for manslaughter, the Delhi High Court, and not the opposition, not the Congress, was saying that this government has got blood on its hands. As far as the economy is concerned, there's been in doldrums since demonetization in 2016. So I think everything will play out. And therefore, in my opinion, the Congress is literally centrifugal to an opposition resurrection. Because you cannot have a non-BJP government if Congress is not a key performer in the next elections. Now, to answer your question on ideology, I do believe that, well, the BJP may have won elections. But, so the winning elections got nothing to do with governance. If you look at demonetization, the terrible handling of the GST, the migrants walking on the roads, the pandemic handling, and the job crisis. You take these five. I mean, I haven't seen a more incompetent government in my life. So with due respects to the BJP government, they're a failure. Now, their luck with the BJP is that at a time when the Congress should have been out on the streets, not just social media. You got to do social media because it's pandemic, blah, blah. But you have to find ways and means to completely arouse the people's sentiment. into saying, listen, demand more. You have a right to ask, what is your government doing? That's democracy. Look at what the Delhi High Court says yesterday. I mean, the Delhi High Court's, verdict on the bail given to the people on the Delhi riots case tells you what kind of a political party you have at the helm of affairs. That if you have a protest or you have a dissent, they call it a terror. They call it conspiracy. I mean, this is the most insecure government in my life. It's got 303 seats in parliament, but they're chicken. They're chicken. A bunch of JNU students or, Jamia students will, call the government certain names and they brand them as traitors. Oh, for God's sake, go and read your constitution, you bunch of clowns. See, this is the problem. This is the problem. There's no harm. I mean, I don't mind losing an election to the BJP. But let the BJP govern the country and not try and take it down some, kind of a religious theocracy. The fact of the matter is, I'll tell you what, Mr. Modi and the BJP know how to win elections. They can't govern this country to save their lives. And I have a feeling India has woken up. And therefore, to answer your question, the Congress as ideology, I do think the Congress has made goof-ups. It is at core secular, but it has made compromises, just like the BJP made with the PDP in Jammu and Kashmir, for example. Okay? If there's anybody playing, people blame the Congress for minority appeasement. But I have a counter question. Minority appeasement, then you're saying Congress plays around with 14% of the votes, right? Hey, but the bulk of votes is Hindus like me and you, 80%. The BJP plays majority appeasement. How about that? The Congress, unfortunately, doesn't know how to create that narrative. I mean, I want to ask as a very proud, I'm a Brahmin, I'm a Hindu, and I'm very proud of it, by the way. I'm very proud to say that I come from a religion that I respect a lot. I go to temples and do my religious rituals whenever they're required. But I have one question to ask. Who's appointed the BJP to be the custodian of my great religion? Who's made is Hinduism the same as Hindutva? Hindutva was uttered by Vinayak Savarkar in 1923. Hinduism is centuries old. How did this party become a monopolist of my religion? You see, this is the problem with India. Politics into religion. And I think the Congress needs a leader who can take this battle to the other side. Because the people of India, I can tell you, are secular and liberal at their intrinsic level. They may have been momentarily waylaid, but I think the Congress party, well propagated, will bring everyone back to its flock.
But is Congress doing anything about it? See, it's easy to say that BJP is playing the majority politics or whatever, Hindutva politics. But at the end of the day, people are buying that. See, it's all about the vote share. Like if I am saying something and if I'm getting voted, you are a politician. The parties will take it because they want a narrative which is acceptable in public. So now whether that is how right that is or how wrong that is up to the people to decide. So when they decided to vote Modi back and probably with the Gera mandate, then I think it says something that probably that is also one part that Congress could have also addressed. I'm not saying that Congress should also do what BJP is. I'll circle back to the same question that you see from today that BJP is perhaps preparing for 2024. I don't see that in Congress. So where is this, the gap? You say there is an opportunity. Yes, I agree. Everybody probably, if you read, there are a lot of narratives which probably Congress could have used to come back to as a strong opposition, as someone who could build its own narrative and stand for people whose voices are allegedly not being heard or seen. So in that context, why is it always a missed opportunity? And with that, my second question: in UP, Priyanka Gandhi was given the responsibility. She has been putting a lot of allegations against the Yogi Adityanath government and how it is failed on all the factors. But if you look at any analysis today, whether it is the pundits, the political analysts, or the electoral pundits, you ask them, they don't consider Congress as the strongest opposition in UP. It still is about the regional party, the Sapa, Baspa, and all of that. Baspa is not there, but Sapa perhaps. So in that way, is this also a lost opportunity? It's also a missed opportunity now for Congress?
Well, I do believe that. I'm sorry, my dog's gone for a walk behind me. My simple point is, you're absolutely right, that the Congress has to be hungry. The Congress needs to be angry with itself, and it needs to galvanize this entire workforce. You can't win an election in this country if you are not going to be prepared for it, in my opinion, at least a couple of years in advance.
Yes.
That's where the BJP actually, in my opinion, completely outsmarts the Congress. But what I admire the BJP for is hard work. They work hard. So they win one election, they're immediately focused on the next. And you see what they're doing, Sujata, is because their governance has been quite pathetic, honestly. What they do is they're picking up the good people from the Congress. So the Congress, as I wrote in my article in the Sunday Times of India, is becoming like how the Tatas used to be once upon a time. Any new company, big company that came to play, they used to hire a guy from the Tatas. And the Tatas was a famous, poaching ground for good talent. Congress is becoming the same. We have got phenomenal people. I mean, Jyotiraditya was very good. I mean, Jitin too is a good guy. So, we are losing good talent because we are not able to demonstrate the confidence in these guys that, listen, we are in this fight and we can win. So there is no denying, and I completely agree with you, that the Congress cannot afford to lose a single day. I keep telling that to all the leaders in the party. Make every day count, whether it's resource raising, strategy, motivating your people, planning a communication campaign, whatever you do, every day you need to grow. Even if you're growing small, keep growing. Keep growing. You got to be making progress. You can't be stagnating or going backwards. And I think that is the problem that we face.
Also, I think one of the two segments which has come up as a very important segment and no party can afford to ignore is one is your young voters, and other is about the women voters. If you see the recent 5 elections, most of the parties which won, the women voters were one of the decisive factors, be it Bengal, be it Tamil Nadu, be it Assam also. So in that context, on that front too, I don't see too many things being done from the Congress as well. They just pick up issues and, probably not build up on that. I never see any narrative getting built. It will be one day social media war, here BJP IT cell versus Congress supporter and all of that, and then it just fizzles out. So that is also one front which I feel that the parties must concentrate on, because today I think youth is looking for an alternate, because a strong opposition is the need of the nation. Forget about anything else, it's need of the nation. You need a strong opposition to raise questions. You need an opposition to keep the government in checks, no matter how great the government is. Imagine the Raja did not have any monthly, nobody to question what he will do. He will do whatever comes in his mind. So probably that is also required. I'm a BJP supporter, but then, as a nationalist, I believe that opposition equally is very important. So yeah, here you go. Okay. So Sanjay, coming to you, as a congressee, as a congressman, you have time and again, quote unquote, spoken against the Hindutva appeasement of BJP. You just spoke about it while we begin to speak. But come elections, and you also see Priyanka Gandhi taking a dip in the holy Ganga, Rahul Gandhi claiming himself as a Janayodhari. And not only, this is not just restricted to Congress, but if you go to Bengal, you see Mamata Banerjee doing Chandi Path and others. You will not be able to pick up one state where this doesn't happen. Then don't you think that opposition fails to create a narrative of their own? And one side they would say, oh, BJP is a communal party and it is using Hindutva politics to probably create a sense of fear in the minorities, etc. But again, do the same majority appeasement when it comes to the vote bank politics. Loss of
Sujata, so to be very frank, I mean, I don't have to apologize for taking a dip in the Ganga, do I? I mean, this is exactly the point. That Rahul Gandhi goes to a temple, why should that be a headline at all? It, frankly, is immaterial. That's his religion. He's a Hindu. And I do feel that, until India continues to look at each other through the prism of the place that you pray or the God that you pray, this country is going to be driving in reverse gear. One of the reasons why India's economy, by the way, under Mr. Modi has been so underwhelming or underperforming is no society develops where there is an internal strife and conflict. For economic growth, one of the prerequisite conditions is a social environment and tranquility. If you have a government which is obsessed with, what is the color of this man's skull cap, or is he got a beard or he doesn't have a beard? I mean, what are we wasting our time on, for God's sake? And I think that is beginning to hurt this government. Like you said, Priyanka Gandhi goes and takes a dip, or Rahul goes to a temple. I have always said that nobody is obligated to tell the world who they are or what they are in terms of their private
But
religious.
They are telling, isn't it? While going to the temples, aren't they telling?
But that's my point. That's my point. That's my point. You see the issue
media
in India
as well. They don't go in, in during the night or during the wee hours where nobody sees. They go in the broad daylight with media covering, and those things are published in the newspaper on the front. So there is a politics, isn't it? So one way you counter one thing, another you keep on doing the same thing. This is why I say ideological crisis. You have to stand for something. You decide. You even if you have 20% vote, you decide, I won't stand for this. I will stand for real issues. I'll talk about unemployment. I'll talk about issues of young. I'll talk about, probably women's security. I'll talk about things like that, which matters too. It looks like that only Hindutva matters, but I refuse to believe, being a woman myself, that these are the only issues that matter and drive a vote bank politics in India. No. The problem is nobody talks about it. Everybody sees, there is a lot of crowd being pulled because somebody is talking idiotic things about, a religion, X religion or Y religion, and they just get pulled. It's like, rather than creating a narrative of their own, they just get dragged by their narrative. And that's where the major failure happens, because people say, ye bhi yahi bol raha hai, wo bhi wahi bol raha hai. So it's iसी को दे दो.
Well, Sujata, I'll give you one example. Let's look at the Kumbh Mela, the Mahakumbh that happened at Haridwar. Can you tell me which government, if the government had any brains, would it hold a Kumbh Mela during the time when the cases were rising?
But would it also?
Why did they do that?
But would it also allow farmers?
Hear me out. That to me is a government that needs to be voted out. India is in the midst of a health emergency. Okay. You have the chief minister of the state who says, Bhagwan will take care of it. I mean, I have never seen, I think Mr. Modi's government is the most anti-science government in the history of the universe. So you are facing a health emergency that is devastating your country. And you preponed a Mahakumbh from 2022 to 21. You know why? Because you wanted to placate and pacify your vote bank ahead of the elections that were happening in West Bengal, Assam, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Puducherry. You know what the government did? I'm aware there were full-page advertisements with the chief minister and even the prime minister was on it. So if a government is putting your life in danger, since I'm glad you're honest enough to say that you're a BJP supporter, let me ask you this question, and I want you to answer it.
I will answer it.
Tell me, how would you judge the Congress? 1 minute, you answer. No, you answer me here. How would you have judged the Congress if in the city of Mumbai where you live, the Congress allowed a massive Ganesh procession to happen at a time when thousands were dying in Mumbai and you and your family were vulnerable because there was an election coming up 3 months later? Yeah, I think to my mind, that is an act of criminality. Because I don't know whether you've seen the latest report. There are reports that say that there were 1 lakh fake tests, right? So I want to ask a question of Mr. Modi's government. Don't ask questions of Uttarakhand. Ask a question of Mr. Modi's government. Ask the health minister. You know what you need to ask him? Did the second wave happen because people got infected and went back to their several states? Then I want to ask, who has got blood on their hands? Who? I think India needs answers. I'm going to tell you, India will need to have a commission of inquiry, independent, to know why did this happen. Every human life in this country matters, Sujata. And somebody will have to make an explanation for it. Let me tell you, it doesn't matter who wins today or tomorrow, but those cases will have to be opened. Somebody will have to answer these questions. And therefore, I want to tell you this here, that forget our political preferences for a while. It doesn't matter. Let me tell you something. They don't, no matter whether you like BJP or I like Congress, ultimately, you got to fend for yourself.
That's
Right? Atmanirbhar means, you know what? You're on your own. Sarkar ko bhul jao. Apne aap mein raho. That is a new definition of Atmanirbhar. Okay? When you're in a crisis, nobody helps you. And when the state lets you down, the common man is helpless. And I do hope that the reality that we face today is this: the Congress cannot win elections and the BJP cannot govern. The Congress is horrible at opposition and the BJP is at its best in the opposition. These are the hard realities of life. They need to swap places from time to time.
This is making the headlines tomorrow. What you just said, but you would agree, Sanjay, that it's just not BJP. I really believe that all the governments failed, central, state, everybody failed because they probably did not anticipate or they took it too lightly. And also not just for Kumbh Mela. Yes, Kumbh Mela was something that could have been avoided, but also the farmer protest, also the mosque gatherings, any gathering for that matter, you should have just stopped, because it is not about religion, politics, when people's life are in danger. So I do agree with you that, there were lapses, but I would like to add that the lapses were just not there. That's everywhere. I saw it everywhere. In Maharashtra, I have gone to Dadar and I saw like people had no social distancing. I was terrified, like I went to have some work and I was like, wow, look at that. People were just, you live next to in South Mumbai. I saw people walking, and they were like, people were just sitting, chilling without masks, etc. So I think not only governments, but I think as people, as citizens also, we took it too lightly. We just let our mask go very easily and, forgot, oh, abhi to corona chala gaya, abhi kya hone ka hai. So things like that. So, so moving to the next question. You seem to be in love with controversy. Right, whether it is your comment about Subramaniam Swamy or Atal Bihari Vajpayee, or even Congress party itself, Congress, the Gandhi family calling them kryptonite. You seem to be the controversy's favorite child. In a profession where people will run far and wide from any sort of controversy, why do you not seem to follow the golden rule?
So let me tell you, I do believe there's somewhere when you're a spokesperson, you follow a script. But when you're more independent, I do believe you need to bite the bullet. You need to stop, kind of pussyfooting around and, call a spade, a shovel, a shovel. And I try as far as possible, to be honest with you, in not rubbing people on the wrong side. I don't like to get personal on any conversation. It has happened, you all get, everyone gets riled or exasperated, or occasionally somebody on the other side is trying to provoke you and you please him by getting instigated. But the fact of the matter is that, I have tried at my personal capacity to always be measured. And sometimes you do like to make a comment or an observation that you believe, will provide the ammunition for it to be escalated if you believe it needs to be escalated. I do believe the Congress has to wake up and smell the coffee, for example. I mean, whether it's Starbucks or a filter coffee is up to them to choose. But the Congress has to wake up. It can't be like, in a deep snoring Rip Van Winkle mode. And there's times you regret some things you say, but that has been fortunately for me few. One of the couple of examples you gave are absolutely bang on right. But given the fact that I've been in the public space for now almost like 10 years, I mean, that is still like, one solo, but that doesn't make a summer. So somewhere down the line, I think Indian political or public discourse needs to be a lot more measured. It has to be less polarized. Two people can have a dialogue and they can be in different sides of the spectrum. They don't have to be at each other's throats. Some of the stuff that I see on television is ugly. It's really making a mockery of our political dialogue. So I do hope that the BJP and the Congress, as two national parties, take a deep breath, step back and say, listen, guys, we're setting such a terrible example for this country by actually, lowering these standards to such a pedestrian level. And frankly, it's for the leaders to tell their people that, you please take on, please criticize, condemn, do what you like, but you should know where to draw the line.
Hmm. Now let's talk about your book, The Great Unraveling India After 2014. What is it about? And why one should read? Yes, I see a lot of great reviews about your book, one of the best sellers already. But tell my audience that why you should not miss this book.
Well, Sujata, you should not miss the book for the simple reason that I think I have tried to very honestly paint the narrative of India from, shall we say, 2012, 13, and 2014 onwards, when the BJP became really the big muscular party in parliament and outside. I do believe that the biggest risk India has today is that it over relies on its political system to deliver, whether it's BJP or Congress.
Oh, that is true. That is so true.
Yeah. Yeah, and politicians are politicians, right? They live from one election cycle to another.
I agree.
When you look at, you're young, and I do believe, the areas that all political parties should debate are the health of my institutions.
Yeah.
Am I respecting my constitution? Are we doing good on healthcare and education? I would, Sujata, in your boots, I would debate a lot on what are we going to do on climate activism, because these are the realities of our life. Think about it, that we are battling with the roti kapra makan issues even today, that when there is a terrible pollution in Mumbai or Delhi, barring a couple of debates, nobody even thinks about it, because we are like, forget it, first let's live, then we'll think about breathing bad air. But that's not right? So I think today the biggest example post the pandemic is the importance of a distributed infrastructure for health services, of the fact that we have to ultimately be in a state where oxygen, for God's sake, cannot be denied to somebody who needs them. So you're back in India to some very elementary, basic, rudimentary levels of governance that we need. And therefore, I feel that it is for the Congress and the BJP to begin to bring these issues into the forefront, as opposed to saying, I'm going to beat up ghar mein ghus ke marunga Pakistan ko. What the hell is all that? Yeah. I mean, all of us are patriotic. Nobody in this country needs to be told that, you're a patriot. You don't need a certificate from me. I don't need a certificate from you about our commitment to our country's ideology, politics, or constitution. But I think the way we have behaved ourselves, I think has been very, very shameful. But, and it's setting a terrible, shall we say, impression on the impressionable young people who will say, what are we getting for governance in this country? What kind of people are its brand ambassadors? And I feel that needs to change. So I remain bullish. My book, The Great Unraveling, actually paints a picture that says that, listen, guys, whether it's a media, the BJP, the Congress, ideology, or the politics, you cannot kill a person in this country because of his or her religion or caste. I write extensively on the deaths on lynching. And I write, how crude can that get? Just imagine for a moment, Sujata, a relative of yours or mine walking down a road in some part of Bihar that both of us come from, being suspected of maybe carrying a cattle, or one of our relatives has a beard, or doesn't have a beard, or is, for that matter, a priest. And a hostile bunch of people get together and kill that person on some suspected theft or some WhatsApp rumor. How would you and I react to that? And I feel as a country, we should always wake up and say that no one in this country should be subjected to violence, hate, and fear. Because that is a fundamental right to live a life with dignity and grace. And I think the day the BJP and the Congress and some of the other parties can begin to talk the language of hope, of unity, of a collegial approach to politics. I know politics by its very nature is antagonistic and it's very acrimonious. But if we try, we can focus on issues. There will be the rhetoric. I'm willing to live with that during election time for a bit. But if that continues even between elections, then we are not focusing on what people need. We have become nothing but a self-serving bunch of selfish, hypocritical politicians.
I would agree to you for to a certain extent, I would agree to you. Whether the lynching happens or anything, whether it is Muslim or whether it is a Hindu,
Yeah,
these
it doesn't
things
matter.
shouldn't happen
Ugly.
as simple as that. Okay, so since you spoke of Bihar and we don't get to hear you on issues about Bihar, I will ask you the same question which I keep asking everybody who I meet from Bihar. Why, even after 74, 75 years of independence, things don't change in Bihar? Why? Every party has ruled, Congress has ruled, regional parties have ruled, and BJP has supported. So you can't say, oh, only this party or this party did well or that party did well. Things don't change. Why? I mean, if Gujarat can change, if Maharashtra can change, if other parts of India could change, why there's 20 years back I left Bihar, I still go back, same things, same mentality, and same politicians talking the same things which they were talking 10 years ago, Jat Path and things like that. And here you have the young people forced, I would say forced, to leave their house, go sit in some part of the other country or, probably outside. And probably they also wonder like me that kabhi to cheeze badlengi. Why things don't change at all? I have a very controversial word for Bihar politics is akarmanyata. Nobody wants to do anything. It's like chal raha hai, chalta hai. Is there anything else like as a Bihari by root? You don't live there, but how do you see that?
तो इसका जवाब हम हिंदी में देते हैं सुजाता जी। हम तो इतना ही कहेंगे कि देखिए ये हम लोग का दुर्भाग्य है, सच कहिए, कि बिहार में जब हम बड़े हो रहे थे, हम कुछ साल हमारे जिंदगी का बिहार में शुरू हुआ और वहां पर सब लोग जो पढ़े लिखे थे उन्होंने नहीं लेकिन हम मजाक नहीं कर रहे हैं। उन्होंने सब कहा कि देखिए हम दिल्ली में जाके हम IAS बन जाएंगे, IPS बन जाएंगे, डॉक्टर बन जाएंगे, इंजीनियर बन जाएंगे और इंजीनियर बन जाएंगे, जैसे हम कहते थे इंजीनियर बन जाओ और एलाइड सर्विसेज में बैठेंगे, बस खत्म। बिहार में नौकरी थी नहीं और सब लोगों को कोई सरकारी काम करना था। अब आप देखिए कि बिहार की राजनीति, हमारा जो खेदजनक बात है, जो शर्मनाक बात है हमारी बिहार की राजनीति का, धर्म नहीं था वहां पे। धर्म में मैं समझता हूँ अभी भी उतना धर्म का कोई राजनीति नहीं है, मजहब दूर है, लेकिन जात पाती बहुत ज्यादा है। हमने अपनी किताब में एक्चुअली लिखा नहीं, लेकिन हम आपको बताना चाहेंगे कि हम ज्यादा करके, मेरा वक्त पूना में गुजरा, हम कुछ 1 साल के लिए हम पटना गए। पापा को कोई वहां पर 1 साल के लिए कोई गवर्नमेंट का नौकरी मिला। He was a consultant to the Bihar State Planning Board. तो वहां गए तो वहां पर एक बहुत बेहतरीन स्कूल है सेंट माइकल्स, उसको कॉन्वेंट स्कूल है। वहां पर हम गए और हमको 1 हफ्ते के अंदर किसी ने पूछा, तो ब्राह्मण हो, हम ये सिंह हैं, हम ये राजपूत हैं, कोई भूमिहार है? I'll be honest with you, I just thought there was a Brahmin. Then I discovered that there's a Bhumihar Brahmin and there is some other Brahmin. It's crazy. And कोई राजपूत है, कोई कायस्थ है, कोई ये है, कोई वो है। You cannot grow like that. और यही एक तरीके से यदि आप देखिएगा, इसी कारण बिहार आगे बढ़ ही नहीं रहा है। देखिए कुछ राजनेता जो है वो चाहते हैं कि बिहार पिछड़ा रहे, मतलब आपको सरकार की जरूरत पड़ेगी, आपको राजनीतिक दल की जरूरत पड़ेगी, आपको शिक्षा हो, आपको स्वास्थ्य हो, तो आपको सरकार की क्या जरूरत है। अब देखिए केरला में हेल्थ और एजुकेशन अच्छा है, केरला में उनको जो मन होता है करे। उन्होंने दे क्रिएटेड हिस्ट्री, दे ब्रॉट CPM बैक अगेन। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि देखिए एक तरीके से हमारी जो सबसे बड़ी कमजोरी रही है वो ये है कि हमारे यहाँ जो पढ़े लिखे लोग हैं वो भाग गए हैं बाहर से। एंड आई एम equally responsible. Have I gone back to Bihar to contribute in any way? The answer is no. Can I do that? The answer is yes. How do I do it? Well, I need to figure out a way and maybe talk to Nitish Kumar's government and say, okay, I can help you in education. Maybe try and see if we can set up a learning academy. I can try and do something in education maybe. Have we done it? The answer is no, for whatever reasons, right? So I do feel कि बिहार के राजनेता के बारे में जितना कम कहा जाए उतना ही अच्छा। ज्यादा लोग भ्रष्ट रहे हैं, ज्यादा लोग एक घटिया घिनौनी राजनीति में ही उन्होंने पूरा अपना वक्त गुजारा है। आप देख लीजिए पासवान जी के पार्टी का क्या हाल है। और दूसरी बात कि बिहार के जो लिखे पढ़े लोग हैं जो वहां पर पूंजी ले आ सकते थे, इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि जो बिहार में जो है वो भी बहुत पढ़े लिखे हैं, बौद्धिक हैं, मेहनती हैं, ये सब बात सही है, लेकिन जिनको कुछ उपलब्धियां थी उसको उन्होंने वापस अपने राज्य में वो सब जो सुविधाएं वो ला सकते थे या परिवर्तन वो ले आ सकते थे, उन्होंने नहीं लाया। और मैं समझता हूँ इसीलिए अंत में आवाम ही अपने राज्य के साथ एक विश्वासघात किया है। राजनेता के बारे में जितना कम कहा जाए उतना ही अच्छा, क्योंकि जनता को यदि विकल्प ही नहीं है तो जनता करेगा। So I do believe that's a short answer to Bihar's problems. I think the good people in Bihar need to go out and bring a story back to Bihar. I do believe a lot of NRI Biharis, a lot of us, people like you and me, we need to create a story for attracting investment, infrastructure. Don't forget that until it became Jharkhand, Tata Nagar was part of Bihar, and you cannot get a better industrial metropolis than Tata Nagar, which is a self-sufficient. So if a Tata Nagar could happen in Bihar, why can't it happen in more districts of Bihar? Sujata, you've been so kind to call me for this, and I've really enjoyed it. Maybe I'll take one question before we wrap up, but I want to tell you this has been a lovely conversation so far. Maybe one more question, because then I have to go somewhere.
Yes. So before we go and we wrap this up, I want to know the real Sanjay, a bit about the things that don't come in the public life, don't come in the newspapers and blogs that you write and the books that you've written. Who is Sanjay? What's that one thing that Sanjay Jha would like to be known for?
Well, I'll tell you something. I'm somewhere at the bottom of my heart, probably, a simple guy with the most minimum, shall we say, expectations of anything other than, just getting up in the morning and having your cup of tea, reading your newspaper. I'm a big lover of sports.
I saw that tennis. Yeah, tennis. Yeah. I saw. Yeah.
I love tennis. I play reasonably well. I'm a decent player of chess. I write quite a bit, and I'm mostly a voracious reader. I love music. I'm particularly fond of ghazals, and I love country music and stuff. But if you ask me, what is my best one thing I'm very proud of? Okay, my daughters may not agree, but I think I can qualify for being one of the world's best fathers. They have always been my priority. Wow. And I think at the end of the day, I don't think any wife will give a husband a 10 on 10, but I do.
Why would you say that? Of course.
I think that's the nature of that dynamic relationship.
So are we going to see Sanjay Jha in some other new avatar in 2022 when the UP election happens, or 2024 when the General Assembly election happens? So yeah. So are we going to see Sanjay Jha back to Congress?
You never know. As I said, that you never say no. I have, for example, a big conviction that tomorrow is a new day, and while you live in the moment and you live today, tomorrow is a new day, and you never know what are the potentialities that open up. So all doors are open. I would say all windows are open as well. We'll see where that happens. But in the meantime, one unfinished part of my own life is I'm a big lover of animals, and I think I have a particular vibe with dogs and cats. So I used to write in my Twitter bio, I'm a dog whisperer. And for me, I think these little things bring the highest level of delight. Hanging out, doing the casual stuff, just going for a jog or a brisk walk in the evening by the sea, writing an article, hanging out with my dog. You just saw him walk outside of me. Hey, by the way, this is the book that I was just reading, How to Live with a Neurotic Dog. And that's the chap who walked out behind me when I was talking. So that's proof to you that, I just believe that if you love nature, you love animals, and you are compassionate towards those who need our generosity, our help, we're good. I think we're very privileged, but your privilege is worth jack all if you don't go out and make a difference to people. So I try and do that. And hopefully, if one day I enter parliament, I promise you one thing, and I'm not being cocky here, you'll see a very different kind of a politician.
We do hope so. We do hope so. And thank you so much, Anita, for talking to us. And I wish you all the luck in the future, all the light in the future, all the success in the future. So thank you so much for talking to me. It's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, and a very different politician indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sujata. You take care. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.